in the saga in Israel and Palestine. For those of you that haven't seen or heard the deal as it stands so far, the Hamas and Israel were closer than they had been to a deal, which would begin with phase one and a 6-week ceasefire, where Hamas would release 33 Israeli hostages, women, children, elderly, and or wounded, including 5 female soldiers. Okay. Israel would release 1,000 Palestinian detainees, 30 detainees for every civilian hostage that Hamas releases, 50 for every single soldier hostage that Hamas releases. And then Israel would also facilitate the arrival of 600 humanitarian aid trucks every day. The UN said that number today was 70. Israeli forces would leave populated areas, and Israel would leave the Netzarim corridor. So, but they would remain on the 2 edges of Gaza, including the Philadelphia corridor that separates Gaza from Egypt. Now, how close are they or were they that Hamas actually accepted the deal, but we're still on the map in implementation? Blinken said they were on the brink of a deal, but the final issues are these, that where exactly, literally, the meter that Israeli forces will be deployed along the border of Gaza, and also the names and sequencing of the Palestinian detainees, many hundreds of which are convicted of terrorism and face life sentences. So there's a phase 2. You would see another round of Israeli hostages released, another round of Palestinians, the back and forth. Then phase 3, which is going to be long term, you would see the final Israeli hostages that are left. And again, that third paragraph reading from the deal was the bodies of the remaining hostages. So it's very concerning as to what that's going to look like. The bodies of many of the hostages who are believed to have died, but you would get long-term plans for Gaza and Palestine's future. That's the rebuilding plan. That's the pulling out of Israeli troops, bringing in the other Arab nations to act as security. So Itamar Ben-Gvir threatened to quit if this deal goes through. He's Israeli's national security minister. The deal that is being formed is terrible, and it brings back the threat of encirclement of the residents of southern Israel, effectively erasing the war achievements that have been gained with much blood of our fighters. That was a quote from Itamar Ben-Gvir. So now Ben-Gvir can't bring the government down himself, which is really being given to them more as a hostage release than a possible end of the war. As I said earlier, Israel is pretty much being clear that none of this is going to end the war for them, and they don't want any pressure to claim that the war is at any kind of end. But this is a Hamas victory in this war that was handed to them. Whether Biden's taking credit for it, Trump's taking credit for it, it doesn't matter. This is a handed to Hamas as a victory. They want to reform the Palestinian Authority to manage the territory and manage the region and the rebuilding, which again, decades long. So what the breaking news is, Israel has pushed back the vote because Hamas is looking for making more asks. Let me play this real quick, and then I will get out of your guys' hair. Oops. I don't want that.
Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcasting from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Israel and the Islamist Hamas reach a Qatari, Egyptian, and U.S.-mediated hostage release deal. Turkey levels a threat towards Israel over its presence on Syrian territory. Ankara and Damascus announced their will to seize control of prisons and camps in which tens of thousands of Islamic State terrorists are incarcerated in Syria. Israel and the Islamist Hamas terrorist organization have reached an agreement via Qatari, Egyptian, and American mediation, as part of which Israeli hostages will be released in exchange for a long list of far-reaching Israeli concessions.
Qatar, the Arab Republic of Egypt, and the United States are happy to announce the success of joint mediation efforts in order to reach a deal between the parties in conflict in the Gaza territory to exchange prisoners and hostages, and a return to a prolonged truce that achieves a permanent ceasefire between the two sides, in addition to the delivery of large amounts of humanitarian relief and aid to the Palestinian brothers in the Gaza Strip.
Remember that the aid has been used by Hamas as a money-making from the Palestinian populace. They are withholding the aid from the Palestinian populace and charging exorbitant fees. They're using it for families to volunteer their sons to fight or Hamas. They're using it to get weapons. It's not just beans and bullets. It's fuel. It's medical supplies and everything else. So they're using the aid as a extortion tool.
It is important to highlight that while Qatar was quick to announce the deal, which per the agreement is expected to be implemented on January 19th, the Israeli Prime Minister's office in Jerusalem stressed in a statement, quote, "There are still several unfinished sections in the outline, and we hope that the details will be finalized tonight." And while the referred to details have yet to be resolved, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu nonetheless, shortly before midnight in Israel, called U.S. President-elect Donald Trump and thanked him for his help in advancing the release of hostages from Hamas captivity and for assisting Israel to end the suffering of dozens of the hostages and their families. Moreover, Netanyahu also blessed President Trump for his commitment to work with Israel to ensure that the Gaza Strip will never be a safe haven for terrorists.
So understanding that the deal gives up land, withdrawal of troops, and withdraws protection from for southern civilian centers in Israel. I don't understand how Netanyahu is thanking anybody for the deal. Hamas should be thanking people because this, again, as I said, is handing Hamas a victory.
The Israeli premier subsequently held a separate phone conversation with outgoing President Joe Biden, during the course of which he also thanked him for assisting in advancing the hostage release deal. Immediately after the phone call, President Biden made an announcement to the press alongside the outgoing Secretary of State and Vice President, proclaiming the ceasefire and laying out some details related to the deal.
The deal is structured in 3 phases. Phase 1 will last 6 weeks. It includes a full and complete ceasefire, withdrawal of Israeli forces from all the populated areas of Gaza, and the release of a number of hostages held by Hamas, including women and elderly and the wounded.
Okay, dummy. I know I'm supposed to be serious, but I mean, for Christ's sake, this, I don't know. The deal is going to make it difficult for many hostages to be released, I believe.
And I'm proud to say Americans will be part of that hostage release in phase 1 as well. And the Vice President and I cannot wait to welcome them home. In exchange, Israel released hundreds of Palestinian prisoners.
It's about 12 to 1,600 Palestinian prisoners, known terrorists, known murderers who are not terrorists, but just plain murderers.
And during phase 1, the Palestinians can also return to their neighborhoods in all areas.
Phase 1 allows unrestricted return of anyone to Palestine. No one even knows where all of the weapons storage facilities are in Gaza. They haven't located all of them. I'm balls and strikes here.
Areas of Gaza.
It is important to explain that in the first stage, a total of 33 hostages, both living and the bodies of those murdered by Hamas, will be released in exchange for 1,000 Gazan terrorists, with every male hostage over 50, bringing about the release of 30 convicted terrorists, to include terrorists serving life sentences after being convicted for multiple accounts of murder, totaling 110 mass murderers to be freed altogether in the first stage alone. Moreover, during the latter course of the 42 days of ceasefire, as part of phase 1, Israel is expected to gradually reduce its forces in the Philadelphia corridor area. In parallel, Palestinian
Philadelphia is the corridor with Egypt. Philadelphia is where the tunnels were discovered, where Egypt was getting in weapons and supplies to Hamas.
will be allowed to return to the northern Gaza Strip on the 7th day of the ceasefire, and humanitarian aid will be flooded into the terror-ridden territory under supervision of Egypt, Qatar, and to a lesser degree, the United States. Meanwhile, from the second week of the ceasefire, negotiations will restart to try and agree on an outline that would aim to enter into a second phase of a yet-to-be-concluded deal.
You know, during the next 6 weeks, Israel will negotiate the necessary arrangements to get phase 2, which is a permanent end of the war. Let me say it again, a permanent end of the war.
Oh, dear God, Biden. Jesus. What do you mean it hasn't been destroyed? The tunnel system?
There are a number of details to negotiate to move from phase 1 to phase 2.
The reason I'm saying this about phase 1 to phase 2 and Biden saying there's going to be a permanent end to the war, Netanyahu has been clear that he is not going to accept a permanent into the war. Oh, no, Trump said. That's why I don't know if you were here when I said that this is effectively handing a victory to Hamas and is going to embolden them, giving up land, allowing most of the convicts that are going to be released from Israel to go back to Judea and Samaria. So it's putting them right there, right where the civil war is being fought between the Palestinians and Hamas. And then they're going to be allowed to go further south, or they're going to be allowed to go to Algeria, or I forget. Let's see. Okay.
But the plan says if negotiations take longer than 6 weeks, the ceasefire will continue as long as the negotiations continue.
Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, Israeli President Yitzhak Herzog underscored the tough decision which Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu had to make regarding the adoption of the hostage release deal. Nevertheless, he further stressed that the Israeli premier made the right move.
כנשיא מדינת ישראל, אני אומר בצורה הברורה ביותר.
As the president of the state of Israel, I say in the clearest terms, this is the right move. This is an important move. This is a necessary move. There is no greater moral, human, Jewish, or Israeli obligation than to bring our sons and daughters back to us, whether to recover at home or to be laid to rest. We all yearn for the return of our sisters and brothers, all of them. Let there be no illusions. This deal, when signed, approved, and implemented, will bring with it deeply painful, challenging, and harrowing moments. It will also present significant challenges. This is not a simple situation. It is among the greatest challenges we have ever known.
It is important to highlight that the Jerusalem cabinet was supposed to vote on the ceasefire deal at 11 a.m. earlier today. Nevertheless, in a dramatic turn of events at 10:30 a.m., the Prime Minister's office announced that Hamas reneges on parts of the agreement reached with the mediators and Israel in an effort to extort last-minute concessions. Consequently, the statement highlighted that the Israeli cabinet will not convene until the mediators notify Israel that Hamas has accepted all elements of the agreement. And while at the time of recording of today's TV7 Israel news, no developments have been reported on this issue, a senior Israeli official nonetheless highlighted to TV7 that the issue relates to a list of terrorists serving consecutive life sentences, which Hamas now demands their release. And while Israel refuses this last-minute demand, there is a general perception that the issue...
Oops. So did y'all get that now they're demanding more people, ones that are serving consecutive life sentences, instead of the ones they already agreed upon. Just to get the hostages back, Kittle. But it's a 30-1 deal. 30 terrorists for one Israeli hostage. Well, I mean, Trump said they've already, I talked about at the beginning that the aid that has been going in, Hamas has been using it to make money to extort its own citizens to buy soldiers, essentially. So,
And while Israel refuses this last-minute demand, there is a general perception that the issue will ultimately be resolved. Turning to Ankara, where Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan leveled...
That's a Turkey-Israel issue. Don't even want to get into that one. So we can watch my cat's TV shows. That's what they bug me about, to get up in the morning to turn them. So that's the update. The cabinet moved to push the vote back because Hamas is trying to change the rules, and we'll see how it goes. Hey, Trump said, I mean, I've never seen anything like it. My cat's freaking like a crackhead with his TV shows. He just sits there and freaking tries to attack the TV. But he was an indoor-outdoor cat when I was at the farm full time. So, all right, y'all, that's the update so far. I'm sure once I flip back to my news search, there's going to be more. I'm trying to give y'all takes from outside of main media sources. I did Al Jazeera today. I was reading from Al Jazeera when I was reading earlier. I'm not going to put my heritage bias on this as much as possible. It's hard not to. I get a little fired up, but I see problems. But anyway, I'll see you guys in a little bit. Thanks for stopping by and seeing me on such short notice. Y'all have a good one.